Picture this, a massive alien warship, bristling with enough firepower to glass entire planets, looms over Earth. Its Admiral Zorb Qualaxian is pissed, not because of some galactic threat, but because his science officer, Plex Nubaran, trying to tell him that the tiny blue-green marble they're about to invade is actually broadcasting complex signals, and might be home to humans. Yeah, those humans. The Admiral just laughs. Humans. He mocks them as mythical bedtime stories, the kind used to scare hatchlings, quantum unicorns. He jokes, this is going to be the easiest conquest ever, he boasts, already planning his victory banquet. The science officer, visibly nervous, tries one last time, mentioning ancient texts, warnings, descriptions that eerily match what they've observed. But the Admiral isn't having it. Myths are myths. Tomorrow, Earth falls. Cut to the bridge the next morning. Tension is high, but confidence is higher. Thousands of dropships descend. The Admiral watches smugly from his command chair. That smugness lasts about 30 seconds. The first transmission from Earth comes through. It's not a plea for mercy, or even a declaration of war. It's a news broadcast. A human news anchor, calm and professional, reporting on the unidentified aircraft entering airspace. The bridge falls silent. Is that ... One of the commanders breathes. A human. The science officer, vindicated and terrified, whispers, just like the texts ... But the Admiral brushes it off. Sure, it looks like a human, but where's the legendary ferocity? Where's the fight? As if summoned by his doubt, the screen cuts to live footage. A human jet, primitive, combustion-based, rockets towards one of the descending dropships. Everyone braces for a laughably ineffective attack. Instead, the jet explodes. Right into the dropship, not destroyed by alien weapons, but by the human pilot intentionally crashing. The ship is gone. The Admiral sputters. One lucky hit. But then the reports start flooding in. More dropships going down. Primitive weapons being surprisingly effective. And then, the real nightmare begins. Footage shows humans, under fire, dismantling captured Imperial scout drones, reverse engineering them on the spot. The Admiral's confident facade starts cracking. This is impossible, he mutters. No species learns that quickly. But the science officer, finally getting a word in, reminds him of the texts. Adaptability beyond any known species. An integrated tool use so advanced they weaponize anything. Social structures that balance competition and cooperation in baffling ways. And the kicker, they thrive on conflict. The Admiral scoffs, but his voice wavers. Reports keep coming. Imperial vehicles, captured and turned against their former owners. Troops approaching with white flags, only to detonate hidden explosives. Deception tactics, the science officer whispers. The texts mention those too. The confident, smug alien leader is now a pale, stressed figure, his complexion shifting to alarming shades of purple and indigo. The invasion, which was supposed to be effortless, is turning into a catastrophic nightmare, exactly like those mythical ancient warnings. And just as panic truly sets in, the communication console lights up. Not distress calls. Not pleas, messages. From the humans, on secure Imperial frequencies. They've cracked the encryption. The Admiral demands to know what they're saying, dreading the answer. They're proposing terms, the audacity. But the officer continues, voice shaking. They say they've captured 16 dropships intact. They're analyzing Imperial propulsion, weapons, tech. They're grateful for the generous technology donation, and would love to discuss peaceful relations now that we've gotten their attention. The camera zooms in on Admiral Zorb Qualaxian's stunned face, the same face that just hours ago was planning a victory feast. The smug conqueror now realizes, he didn't invade a defenseless muttball. He kicked open a door and found a sleeping dragon. A human face appears on the main screen. Confident. Almost ... amused. My name is General Talia Baxter, she says in perfect Qualaxian. And yes, I'm suggesting you surrender. The bridge erupts in disbelief. Surrender. To them, but General Baxter is just getting started. She details their demands, including the withdrawal of all forces and technical reparations. When the Admiral balks, she drops the final hammer. The humans have stripped safety protocols from captured scout ships, are using Imperial vessels as guided missiles, and have somehow introduced a virus into the ship's systems using something called ... memes. As if that wasn't enough, alarms blare. Hull breach, engine room. The bridge doors hiss open, and in walks a squad of humans, led by a man who casually announces the bridge is secured. The Admiral, surrounded by his own captured crew and the victorious humans, faces an impossible choice. Fight and risk total annihilation, or accept terms from the very mythical beings he dismissed just hours before. The smug invader, now the desperate captive, stares at the human general. The ancient texts, the warnings his science officer tried to give him, echo in his mind. This wasn't supposed to happen. Humans were just a myth, weren't they? The bridge fell silent except for the hum of emergency systems. Admiral Zorb Qualaxian, the mighty conqueror who'd boasted about an easy victory just hours before, now found himself staring down the barrel of a weapon that looked almost laughably simple, yet had already proven devastatingly effective. The human commander, Jackson, stood beside him, radiating a casual confidence that made the alien's skin crawl. Surrender. To them, the very idea was heresy. But as he watched his own bridge crew being disarmed by beings he dismissed as mythical bedtime stories, reality crashed down harder than any tactical error ever could. General Talia Baxter's voice crackled over the comm, calm and measured, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around him. Admiral Qualaxian, I want to make something clear. This isn't personal. You invaded our world. We're simply defending it. Zorb's pride warred with survival instinct. He glanced at his science officer, Plex, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. You knew, he hissed. Plex nodded miserably. The texts, sir, they described adaptability, rapid learning, using anything as a weapon. Zorb had mocked those very texts. Now, watching humans dismantle his ship's systems with frightening speed, he felt the bitter taste of his own hubris. Commander Craig, his scarred shell, now seeming inadequate protection, leaned closer. Sir, we've lost contact with 70% of our ground forces. Reports confirm what we feared. They've turned our own captured tech against us. They're not just fighting. They're learning. The implication was staggering. Every piece of Imperial technology that fell into human hands wasn't just lost, it became a tool for further defeat. Baxter's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. Admiral, you're running out of time. My team has isolated your FTL drive core. One command from me, and we can strand your entire fleet light-years from here. Zorb's respiratory sacs hissed in panic. She wasn't bluffing. He could see it in her eyes, that cold calculation beneath the diplomatic tone. This human female was every bit as ruthless as the ancient texts had warned, maybe more so because she was also incredibly smart. You speak of alliance now, he spat, his voice cracking slightly. After you've boarded my flagship, Jackson chuckled, a sound that grated on the Admiral's nerves. Well yeah, you didn't seem too interested in talking before. Sometimes you need to get someone's attention first. Consider this a very loud introduction. The absurdity of it being conquered by a species that treated invasion like an awkward first date wasn't lost on him. Yet the guns were real, the situation was dire, and his ship was slipping away, piece by piece, as if summoned by his internal despair. Alarms shrieked anew. The tactical display, now fed by human uploaded data, showed a horrifying sight. Dozens of his own dropships, stripped of safety protocols, just as Baxter had warned, were streaking towards his remaining fleet like guided missiles. His fleet commanders, trained for conventional warfare, were helpless against an enemy that turned his own rules against him. They're using our ships as weapons, he whispered, watching icons representing his proud armada flicker and die. They're using our weapons against us, Craig added grimly, watching readouts confirm that human-modified Imperial sidearms were indeed functioning as devastating explosives. The bridge doors opened again, revealing more humans, these ones dragging a group of disarmed Qualaxian soldiers, his men, his crew, captured not in some glorious battle, but in corridors and engine rooms by an enemy that simply shouldn't have been able to overcome their technological advantage. So completely, Zorb slumped slightly in his command chair, the weight of catastrophic failure settling on his broad shoulders. The smug conqueror was now a prisoner on his own bridge, watching his invasion force crumble because he'd refused to believe in a myth. Baxter's image reappeared on the main screen, her expression unreadable. Admiral, I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you surrender your vessel and agree to withdraw your forces, or shall we continue demonstrating exactly how quickly we can dismantle your inevitable conquest? The irony of the ship's name wasn't lost on anyone. Zorb looked around his bridge at his defeated officers, at the confident humans packed the tactical display showing his fleet's annihilation, and realized the choice wasn't really a choice at all. His mind raced, grasping for a way to salvage something, anything, from this disaster. He thought of the Emperor's fury, of his own career, of the smug certainty that had brought him here, and then he thought of Plex's nervous warnings, of the ancient texts he'd so arrogantly dismissed, and of the very real guns pointed at his head. The mighty Admiral, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, or so he'd thought, was about to learn the hardest lesson of his life. Sometimes the myth is real, and it's far more dangerous than anyone ever believed. The corridors of the asterisk. Inevitable conquest asterisk buzzed with an energy that made Admiral Zorb Qualaxian deeply uneasy. Not the organized hum of his own crew carrying out orders, but a chaotic symphony of human voices, tools clanking, and the strange, constant tapping of fingers on keyboards. Whatever those were, Commander Jackson led the way, occasionally pointing out something interesting to his alien guests, like a tour guide showing off a particularly successful invasion. That's our engineering team, Jackson said, gesturing towards a group of humans huddled around a console, wires, and components. Sprawled across the floor, they've already got partial control of your long-range sensors. Pretty impressive, huh? Zorb watched, mesmerized, and horrified. As humans, the mythical beings he'd laughed at, casually rewired the most advanced sensor array in the Imperial fleet using tools that looked like glorified paperclips. Plexnabiran, despite his initial terror, seemed utterly fascinated. He was scribbling notes on his datapad, occasionally asking rapid-fire questions about human engineering principles. But how do you compensate for harmonic resonance without a dedicated dampening field? He asked one engineer. The human A, young woman with grease smudged on her cheek, looked up and grinned. We don't, we just build it tougher and hope for the best. Works 9 times out of 10. Plex's antenna twitched with what could only be described as excitement. This was clearly the most stimulating conversation he'd had in decades. They arrived at what had once been the ship's primary briefing room, now transformed into a makeshift command center. Holographic displays showed the status of the rest of the Imperial fleet, scattered, confused, and largely disabled. General Baxter stood at the center, flanked by other human officers, all focused on the massive tactical display. She looked up as they entered. Admiral Qualaxian Commander Dominar. Welcome to our temporary headquarters. Her tone was polite, professional, but carried an undeniable edge of victory. I trust your tour was, educational. Zorb managed a weak nod, still processing the sheer audacity of it all. General, I must ask, how long have you been preparing for this? Baxter's smile was sharp. Officially, about 6 months after we first detected your long-range transmissions, unofficially decades. We've been watching, listening, learning. When your first scout ships appeared, every nation on Earth, every nation stopped their internal conflicts and started working together. That's something humans do when faced with an existential threat. The implication hit Zorb like a physical blow. They hadn't just been lucky. They hadn't just been adaptable. They had been prepared for an invasion by a species they'd never met, based solely on intercepted radio signals. You waited, he said slowly. You waited for us to come to you. We wanted to make sure you were real first, Baxter admitted. The signals could have been natural phenomena or hoaxes. But a full-scale invasion. That confirmed everything we needed to know about your intentions and your capabilities. Commander Craig, ever the soldier, leaned forward. And your capabilities. General, how did you adapt so quickly? Baxter's expression grew thoughtful. Humans have a saying. Necessity is the mother of invention. Give us a problem, and we'll find a dozen ways to solve it, half of which shouldn't work, but somehow do. Your technology is impressive, but it's also, rigid. Everything has a designated function. Safety protocols, fail-safes, we look at it and see opportunity. This was the moment that truly crystallized the difference between their species, where the Imperium built systems designed to prevent mistakes. Humans seemed to thrive on controlled chaos, finding brilliant solutions in the gaps between protocols. It was both terrifying and oddly admirable. Zorb found himself wondering how many other mythical warnings were buried in the Qualaxian archives, dismissed as fiction when they might have been observations waiting for the right context to become clear. The meeting that followed was unlike any diplomatic session in Imperial history. There were no grand proclamations or ceremonial exchanges. Instead, it was a series of practical negotiations, with humans asking pointed questions about FTL, Dr. Mechanics, while offering insights into quantum computing principles that made Plex's optical sensors dilate with interest. They discussed resource extraction methods, planetary defense systems, and even cultural exchange programs, with a matter-of-fact efficiency that left the alien delegation slightly dazed. The humans weren't interested in conquest or subjugation. They wanted partnership, access to the wider galaxy, and most surprisingly, they wanted to help the Imperium solve problems they'd been struggling with for centuries. It was Jackson who finally voiced what everyone was thinking. You know, Admiral, this whole thing could be spun differently. You came here expecting an easy conquest, found something unexpected, and instead of losing your fleet, you've made first contact with a species that could revolutionize the Imperium. He paused, studying Zorb's reaction. Think about it. You don't have to report a defeat. You can report a discovery. A successful reconnaissance mission that led to a strategic alliance. The seed of an idea began to take root in Zorb's mind. He would have to be careful with his wording, creative with his framing. But Jackson was right. The Emperor valued results, not necessarily the methods used to achieve them. An alliance with humans, bringing their unique problem-solving abilities and technological insights to the Imperium, would be seen as a tremendous achievement. The final agreement was signed in the ship's conference room, witnessed by humans and Qualaxians alike. Earth would be recognized as a sovereign protected world. The captured Imperial technology would be returned mostly, and in exchange, human representatives would join Imperial exploration fleets as consultants, helping to solve navigational problems, improve communication systems, and generally bring their chaotic brand of innovation to bear on galactic challenges. As Zorb initialed the last page, he caught sight of Plex already deep in conversation with a human scientist about the theoretical applications of something called memes in information warfare. Perhaps, he thought, this alliance wasn't just politically expedient, perhaps it was exactly what both species needed. Standing on the bridge of his own ship, watching human engineers install new sensor arrays that were somehow both more sensitive and more rugged than the originals, Admiral Zorb Qualaxian reflected on the strange turn his career had taken. He'd set out to conquer a myth and instead found a reality more complex and potentially more valuable than any conquest. The universe, it seemed, was full of surprises, and the most dangerous ones often looked the most innocent. As his ship prepared to leave Earth's orbit, now accompanied by a small human exploration vessel, he made a note in his personal log, addendum to invasion report. Humans are not mythical. They are real, they are dangerous, and they are going to change everything.